Fans of the MCU have been asking a big question for some time now, and when Spider-Man Far From Home was announced, suspicions went through the roof. And that question is, what is up with the multiverse? Well, we've got some answers for you, but be warned, there are some big Far From Home spoilers ahead, so proceed with caution if you haven't seen the movie. Alright, so if you've seen Spider-Man Far From Home, you know that Mysterio shows up with a lot to say about the multiverse. He claims, and Nick Fury backs it up, that he is from an alternate dimension, Earth 833, which doesn't actually have a Spider-Man, but is otherwise completely identical to the one in which this Peter Parker lives. Mysterio claims that his Earth was totally destroyed by the elementals, and that he actually followed them to the dimension that he calls Earth 616, where he claims our MCU takes place, in order to save another Earth from destruction. Not only that, he also claims the snap from Avengers Endgame so badly damaged the fabric of reality that it made the ability to travel across dimensions even more possible, which would instantly confirm that there is in fact a multiverse. Or not. We know that while Mysterio might be a whiz with the technology, he is not so good at telling the truth about stuff. He's actually just another in a long line of disgruntled Stark Industries employees out for revenge against Tony Stark, may he rest in peace. So, what do we believe? Was everything Mysterio said about the multiverse a lie? Or is it just his personal connection to it the part that's false? Here's what we've put together so far. Everything Mysterio had to say about Earths 833 and 616 and the effect of the snap on the fabric of reality was false. And it's a particularly cruel lie to tell a person like Peter, because as soon as you divulge the possibility of a timeline in which both Uncle Ben and Tony Stark might still be alive and well, as opposed to, well, the opposite, of course he's going to get excited about it. Shame on you, Quentin Beck, that's just mean. But on the other hand, just because Mysterio is a big ol' liar doesn't mean that the multiverse doesn't exist. In fact, based off of the comic book lore that these movies are sourced from, it very much does. And the MCU has actually been talking about it for a while, beginning all the way back in Thor: The Dark World, where Dr. Eric Selvig is seen jotting down notes about a multiverse on a chalkboard in a Beautiful Mind style. Sure, he's in an institution at the time, but we all know that he didn't deserve to be in there. If we look carefully at what he's writing down, it's actually a mix of some pretty legitimate real-world science about multiverse theory, with some Marvel concepts like Dimension 616, the Nexus of all realities, and two-dimensional gateways thrown in there for good measure. Along with that, there's another clue hidden in plain sight in Thor Ragnarok. On the Grandmaster's Tower, there are recreations of some of his previous champions, one of whom is Man-Thing. If you know your comic history, you know that Man-Thing is actually the guardian of the Nexus of all realities and has big ties with the multiverse. So we can surmise that if he was a gladiator for the Grandmaster in the same dimension as Thor and the rest, that he did in fact originate from another timeline entirely. There have been even more references to the multiverse in other Marvel movies, specifically Ant-Man and Doctor Strange. In Ant-Man, we have the quantum realm, in which the laws of time and space do not apply. The quantum realm can be found by shrinking way down to the size of a subatomic particle, and when Ant-Man himself did get a glimpse of it, he found that there was actually a lot of life existing within it. And Doctor Strange is all about the multiverse. The first movie confirmed that there are practically infinite different dimensions. And then, of course, there was Avengers Endgame, in which we saw the Avengers traveling all the way back into the past in order to steal the Infinity Stones from different points in history and bring them all the way forward to 2023 and reverse the damage that Thanos inflicted upon the universe. But what we found out from the Ancient One is that every time the Avengers got their mitts on a stone, they created a new alternate timeline in which the events of the future were changed because of what they did. Classic Back to the Future Biff Tannen getting rich off the sports almanac time traveler problems. Not to mention the fact that Doctor Strange went to check out 14 million different timelines during Avengers Infinity War. So yeah, the multiverse definitely exists in the MCU, and it seems as though it's only a matter of time before the team behind the movie starts exploring what exactly that idea can mean, and how they can send our favorite heroes and villains into every corner of the universe. But before we dive into that, we want to get one more thing out of the way first. In Far From Home, Mysterio goes on about how the Avengers we know and love take place in a dimension called Earth 616. Well, for someone who is seemingly just throwing numbers out there and waiting for something to stick, he actually did land on a universe that does exist in the Marvel Comics, and a very important one at that. It's usually known as Earth Prime, the main timeline where most of the action and continuity from the comic books takes place. But we're here to set the record straight. If you want to be technical about it, the MCU we're used to, which includes every movie that came out after Iron Man, except for Fantastic Four, thankfully, and all the Spider-Man that don't star Tom Holland, take place in the dimension of Earth 199999. That's 5 nines for anyone counting. It was officially established by Marvel as the destination for the movies, even if the storylines are generally borrowed from comic book plot lines of Earth 616. Seeing as how there were over 15,000 known timelines from the Marvel Comics, it makes sense that the movie execs needed one big place to set all the action from their movies in order to keep things relatively sane. Earth 833 is another real Marvel timeline in the comics, even if it is considered fake for the sake of Far From Home. It's actually the home of Spider UK. Spider UK was a man who used to be known as Captain Britain, but after he develops spider powers, has to spend his life jumping from dimension to dimension after his own is destroyed in an event called the Incursion. Spider-Man actually has a very long history with the multiverse, as we got to see a bit of in the incredible Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. In Spider-Man lore, all of the universes are contained within something very sticky sounding called the Great Web, and guarded by spider totems that are essentially spider gods, and something we never need to come across in real life, thank you very much. So what exactly does this mean for the future of the MCU? We can only imagine that with the end of the Avengers as we know it, Marvel is going to be itching to top themselves with movies that are bigger and more ambitious than ever. We're definitely going to be seeing some universe jumping with the upcoming and highly anticipated Doctor Strange 2, because we all know that that guy and the rest of the Masters of the Mystic Arts are all about popping in and out of timelines like a universal game of whack-a-mole. The director of the movie has also spoken openly about his desire to explore what is known as the Nightmare Realm, which, if you ask us, sounds like the place inhabited by those spider gods we mentioned before. While the spider thing might be our personal Nightmare Realm, in the Marvel Comics it is actually a world ruled over by one of Doctor Strange's most important foes, very coolly named Nightmare, who also very coolly happens to be a demon who influences human dreams. Nightmare has also been rumored by several as one of the possible villains of the Doctor Strange sequel, so it would make a lot of sense if Nightmare and the Doctor found themselves facing off in the Nightmare Realm. If so, we can only hope that Nightmare's horse makes an appearance, because its name is Dreamstalker, and we are so down for all of that action. It all sounds like fuel for a darker, more dramatic turn for Doctor Strange, and we can't wait to go along for the ride. There's also the extremely intriguing question of where everyone's favorite non-villain villain Loki is, and if he is actually dead for real. It was hinted that Loki might actually still be alive after making off with the Space Stone when the Avengers went back in time to the Battle of New York. Captain America was given the job of getting all the stones back in their rightful homes after Endgame, but the idea that another reality could have been created if Captain America didn't end up tracking down Loki and stopping him from stealing the stone has been thrown around by the creators of Endgame. With a new Loki TV show in the works, it might make for some seriously exciting television to see Loki jumping around into different realities that are unknown to all of us. Loki's time traveling may send him in all kinds of locations, creating branches of timelines and dimensions that we never imagined. While the future of Ant-Man 3 is still uncertain, we would bet that the filmmakers would be interested in further exploring the quantum realm that they just scratched the surface of in the last movie. There is clearly a ton of untapped potential in the microscopic universe that Ant-Man last visited that could make for a fascinating new way to keep the hero on his toes and audiences swarming to the theaters. So even though we were set up to understand that Mysterio was lying about everything in Far From Home, it seems super likely that the next place that Marvel will go is out into as many different universes as possible. With infinite timelines comes infinite possibilities, and if toying with this idea results in films that are anywhere near as exciting as Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, the Marvel creators have nothing short of gold on their hands. Like we mentioned before, there are 15,000 known Marvel timelines from the comic books, so if Marvel decides to really lean into the multiverse, the possibilities are quite literally endless. Who's to say we won't soon be seeing updated versions of Ultimate Marvel, a universe from the comic books that features entirely reimagined and modernized versions of the heroes in worlds so far unseen by movie audiences? With the contracts up for some of our current favorite Avengers like Robert Downey Jr. and Chris Evans, delving into the multiverse would allow the creators to recast their most popular characters and give them an entirely new life for a new generation of fans. Not to mention a whole new kind of freedom when it comes to timelines. Now that the multiverse has really come to light with Spider-Man Far From Home, we for one cannot wait to see what Marvel does next with the next phase of brand new stories to explore. Is it too early to buy tickets to movies that haven't been made yet? We'll get the popcorn. Whatever happens next, we're pretty sure it's gonna be amazing. What do you think of the Marvel Multiverse? Would you like to see all new iterations of your favorite characters? Or new ones that you've never even heard of? Let us know down below, and we hope you had fun watching this video.